Hi, I'm Juliet from Spoiled Rotten Beads, and today I'm going to show you how to make a SuperDuo herringbone wrap using a macrame laddering technique. So we've made this project for you in a kit actually to make it nice and easy to get started. The kit is available in 3 different colorways. The chalk luster that I'm wearing today, chalk blue luster that's called, that I'm wearing today, the turquoise Picasso here, and the pastel Bordeaux that I'm going to demonstrate for you today. So in order to make this project, you're going to need some SuperDuo beads here, and we've chosen 3 different colorways. You will need a strand of leather cord. You can use a 1mm or a 1.5 to 2mm leather will be ideal. You'll need some Superlon thread in a size D, a button to use as your closure, and the button should have a shank on it. You'll need some size 10 beading needles, some GS hypo cement, some little scissors to cut your thread with, and a macrame board and a T-pin like this one here. If you haven't got a T-pin, then you should be able to use a dressmaking pin, but these are nice and sturdy and do help to keep everything in place. So I'm just going to show you how to get started now. So the first thing that you need to do is to take your length of leather, and in the kit we give you a nice long meter-long length, which you won't need all of, but I'm going to thread on my button first. Take the leather through the shank of the button, and you want to move that leather so that it sits in the center of your, you want to move the button so that it sits in the center of your leather like so. And when you've got it in the center, you need to tie a knot in the leather. And you want to push this knot down so that it sits right underneath the shank of the button, and I'll do that and then get my hands out the way so you can see what I am doing. There we go. So I've got a nice neat knot there just under the shank of the button there. So that will hold that button in place, and the button is going to form my my clasp for this bracelet here. The next thing you need to do, and I'll just move my board down here so you can see what I'm up to, is you want to position everything on your macrame board. So I'm going to take my T-pin and just pop it through the loop above that knot there, and I'm going to move that around so that you can hopefully see that there. So I have positioned my T-pin through the loop on my knot and pushed it down so that it's sitting now nice and neatly in the center of my macrame board. And the next thing you need to do is to take the 2 ends of your leather, and you want to use the grooves on your macrame board to hold them in place. And you need quite a wide spacing to begin with when you're making this bracelet, and you might want to narrow it in as you go. So I'm just going to reposition my button there because I'd let it get a bit loose, and now I'm ready to get started. The next thing you need to do is to take your Superlon thread and add a needle to the thread there, and you need around about 1 meter of thread to make this bracelet with. And then you want to take the end of the Superlon thread that hasn't got the needle in, pass it underneath the bundles of the 2 pieces of leather. We'll call this leather your holding cord in this tutorial. So you want to pass it under the holding cords, and you just want to tie a knot, and it's going to be just a regular overhand knot there, and bring that knot right up under the first knot in the holding cords there, and then I'm just going to tie a double knot on top of that as well, just to secure it and keep it all in place, and pull that tight. There we go. And then I'm going to take my GS hypo cement glue, and I'm going to add a little dab of glue onto that knot just to secure it there on the holding cords and to stop it from coming undone. And when that glue is dry, I can then snip off this little tail of thread that I have left. So now I'm ready to start adding my beads. So I am now ready to get started in adding some beads. So I've got my little knot here, and in a moment I'll be able to trim off the tail of thread. But I'm working with the end of the thread that's got the needle on it. So what I'm going to do is take that thread underneath my first holding cord here, so that it's now in the center of my macrame board. I'm going to pick up one of my SuperDuo beads and go through one of the holes in the SuperDuo bead, and I'm going to let that fall into the center of my macrame board. And it's a little bit fiddly getting started with this, but you'll get the hang of it, and once you've got a few rows it actually forms really nice and neatly, and it becomes a lot easier. So I've got my SuperDuo bead there and my thread is going over the top of my second holding cord here. I'm now going to take the needle and go under that second holding cord and back through the same hole on the SuperDuo bead, and then underneath the holding cord on this side of my board. And I'm going to keep my finger there on it all just to pull it all tight, and you can see my SuperDuo bead sitting there neatly, and I'm just going to move it up towards the top here because we don't want a gap. There we go. So we're now ready to add the next SuperDuo beads, and I'm going to use this nice pink colour here, and now I'm going to need 2 beads. So I'm going to take my thread and it's going to go over the top of this holding cord here, and I'm going to pick up one of my SuperDuo beads and then go through the empty hole on that very first SuperDuo bead, like so. There we go. And then I'm going to pick up another SuperDuo bead and go through one of the holes on that. You see it's all sort of slipping around at the moment, but don't worry, it will get neater in a minute once we've done this first row. And now my thread goes over the top of this second holding cord. I'm going to go underneath that second holding cord and then back through the same holes that I have just exited on all 3 of the SuperDuos. So back through the same holes that I have just exited. And I'm going to pull this through, and then I shall get my fingers out of the way and let you see what it looks like. And it looks like that there. But I want my thread to end up underneath this first holding cord here. So it's going underneath there like so. And I'm just going to shuffle it all up again and pull it tight. There we go. You see everything's kind of struggling to stay in place at the moment. That's because I just need probably about 1 or 2 more rows and then it will all sit quite nicely. Now what I'm going to do is my thread is coming out from underneath this holding cord here. So it's going to go over the top again this time. It's always going to go over the top. So I've got my first 3 beads on and I'm ready to add my next row there. So my thread is coming out underneath this holding cord here. So when I start in a moment, it's going to go over the top. So it goes under and then over. It's always going to go over the top of this holding cord on this side of my board. So what I need to do now is to pick up my next colour of SuperDuo bead. And pop that bead in the center there. You see how the cord is now going over the top, and I'm going to go through the empty holes on the last 2 SuperDuos that I added. I'm going to keep that little bead in the middle there. It's a bit tricky to begin with this because everything wants to move around, but trust me, once you've got your first few rows done, you'll be absolutely fine. Then want to pick up another SuperDuo bead. And again, I'm going to drop that into the center there. And I'm going to take my cord over the top and underneath this holding cord here. And then what you need to do is, to keep that little bead there in the center there we go, is go back through the same holes that you just exited on all 4 of your SuperDuo beads. And this can be a bit tricky to find the space to do that, especially on your first few rows, because everything doesn't want to sit together. But don't worry, just keep at it and you'll get there in the end. So I'm going to get my hand out of the way in a minute so you can see what I've done. There we go. So I've gone back through the same holes on all 4 of my SuperDuo beads there, and my needle is coming out underneath this holding thread here. It's very important that it comes out underneath this holding thread here. If you can't manage to get through all 4 at once, don't worry, just take them one at a time. As long as you go through the same holes on all 4 beads, those holes that you just went through in the first step of this, adding these next row of beads, you'll be absolutely fine as long as you end up underneath this holding cord here. So I'll put my finger on top of that to keep it all in place and pull it all through. Make sure it's nice and tight. And you can see that pattern beginning to form now. So now I can go back to the next colour. But before I do that, I just want to give you a little troubleshooting tip. As you do this, sometimes you'll find the thread on this side of your holding cord becomes a little bit loose. If that happens, the thing to do is to go across to this side here and just pull it through to tighten it up like that, and then use your end of thread here to pull everything nice and tight again. So that's a little troubleshooting tip for you then. So now I'm going to move on to this colour here that I started off with. So again, my thread is coming out from underneath, so it's going to go over the top this time. I'm going to pick up one of my turquoise coloured SuperDuos, and then I am going to go through the empty hole on the last two SuperDuos that I added. And I'm going to pick up one more of my turquoise SuperDuo beads. Let it fall into the center there. The thread's coming over the top of this holding cord, is now going to go underneath. And then again, I'm going to go through the same hole on all 4 beads that I just exited here. And I'm going to end up underneath the other holding thread. And I'm going to struggle to do this all at once. So I'm going to go through these first 2 first of all. And then I'm going to go through the second 2 here. And I'm going to go underneath this holding cord here. And once again, my thread on this side is a little bit loose, so I'm just going to pull it through with my needle like that and tighten it up. And that is all there is to it. So you just need to continue adding beads in exactly the same way. Now you can do it in a pattern like I've done here, or you might choose to mix up your colours and just let them sit randomly on the bracelet. It looks really pretty either way you do it. So I'm going to continue adding beads now, and I'm going to come back to you in a moment when I've just added all my beads. And you'll see the great thing about these macrame boards is that they've got the measurements down the side here. So I'm going to keep going until my bracelet measures around about 6 to 6.5 inches long, and then I'll be ready to finish off and make my clasp loop. So I've been adding my beads now, and I've got my last 2 beads on here, and I've actually taken it up to the point on my board where it says it's at 6.5 inches, and this is going to make a bracelet that's just around about 7.5 inches long. So I've got my last 2 beads on there. So to finish off, I'm going to take my thread, and it's coming out from underneath this holding cord, so it's going to go over the top this time, and it's going to go through the empty holes on those 2 last beads there. So we're not adding any beads this time, and this is just going to zip it up. So it's going to go over the top and underneath this holding cord here, and back through the 2 beads that we just exited, and I'm going to try and end up underneath the holding cord this time. And I'm going to pull that nicely together there, and you see how that has zipped up my little SuperDuo beads there. So I've now got my last few beads on, and I'm ready to finish off. I'm going to remove the needle from my thread and take everything off my macrame board now. There we go. What I've got here, I've been left with my ends of my holding cords and my tail of my Superlon thread here, and I'm just going to pinch it all together and tie a knot in it all, making sure that I take everything through the end of that knot, including the little bit of Superlon cord, and I'm going to use a needle to help me do that. There we go. And then I'm going to pull this knot nice and tight, making sure that it's snug up against those last SuperDuo beads there, and making sure that my thread is pulled nice and tight into that knot as well, and that will keep everything in place. So to secure that, to make sure that the thread I've been using doesn't slip out of this knot, I'm going to use some hypo cement glue, and I'm going to add some glue to that knot, making sure I catch the places in that knot where the thread is. There we go. So that knot now won't come undone, and my thread won't slip out of it. So I can now trim off my little tail of thread here. I'm now ready to tie a another knot in the leather cords here to make a loop for the button here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the button up around here so I can sort of eyeball it and see how big I want the loop to be, because you want it to be big enough for the button to fit through, but not so big that the button can slip out. So I'd say that's about right. So I'm going to tie a knot right there, and we'll be all done. Slide that knot down to the point where I want it to be. Double check that that button's going to fit, and that's going to be just right. So now I can trim off my ends of leather, and I trim them off at a nice angle, then it looks a bit prettier really. There we go. There we are. I'll neaten that one up a bit. Voila. And my buff bracelet is all ready, so I can fasten it up like so. And there we have it, your lovely SuperDuo wrap bracelet using the herringbone laddering technique here. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. Please let us know what you think in the comments below, and come and watch more soon. Thanks, bye.